The rain fell against the penthouse glass like 1,000 tiny fists. Ilara Vance stood just inside the doorway, her nurse's scrubs clinging to her damply, feeling more like a drowned sparrow than a healthcare professional. The opulence of the apartment was a physical weight, all cool marble, stark white walls, and art that looked like it had been purchased by the square foot. It was a beautiful, sterile cage, and in the center of it, caged in a different way, was Liam Blackwood. He was younger than she'd expected for a CEO, his late 30s etched not with jollity, but with a grim fatigue that no amount of money could erase. He hadn't offered her a towel, hadn't asked her to sit. He simply stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, his back to the tempest outside, and regarded her with eyes the color of a winter sea. "Miss Vance," he began, his voice a low, steady baritone that cut through the hum of the central heating. "Your supervisor at the hospital speaks highly of you. She says you have a preternatural calm with terminal patients." Ilara's fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. "I just try to make them comfortable, Mr. Blackwood. It's not preternatural. It's just listening." "I need someone who can listen," he said, his gaze shifting to a hallway leading deeper into the apartment. "But not to me. To my daughter, Chloe. She's 7. Ilara had done her research. Chloe Blackwood, a name that appeared in society pages only in blurred photographs, shielded by her father's formidable presence. The mother, Isabella, had died in a car accident 2 years ago, a tragedy that had turned the Blackwood empire inwards, shrouding it in grief. The posting was for a private live-in nurse, Ilara said carefully, but the details were vague. They were deliberately so. Liam finally moved, walking towards a sleek ebony desk and picking up a silver-framed photograph. He didn't show it to her, simply ran a thumb over its edge. "Chloe isn't sick, not in the conventional sense. She hasn't spoken a word since her mother died. Selective mutism, the doctors call it. A parade of specialists, therapists, nannies. They've all failed." He looked up, and for the first time, Ilara saw past the CEO, past the billionaire. She saw a father drowning in silence. "She's fading," he whispered, the words raw. "Every day she becomes a little more ghost. I'm losing her." Ilara's heart, a muscle she had carefully hardened after years of watching life slip away in hospital wards, gave a painful squeeze. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm a palliative care nurse. I provide comfort at the end of life. I'm not a child psychologist. I don't have the training for this." "I'm not asking for your training," he said, his voice gaining a new, unsettling intensity. He placed the frame back down. "I'm asking for your nature. Your supervisor also mentioned you lost your own family. Your parents! Your younger sister." The air left Ilara's lungs. It was a fact she kept locked away, a private bleeding wound. She'd mentioned it only once, in confidence, to her supervisor after a particularly difficult case involving a young girl. To have it laid bare here, in this cold, magnificent space, felt like a violation. "That has nothing to do with my professional qualifications," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It has everything to do with it," Liam countered, his eyes boring into hers. He took a step closer. "You understand loss. You understand the silence it leaves behind. You know what it is to have your home become a monument to absence." He stopped a few feet from her, close enough for her to see the flecks of gray in his stubble, the desperate hope warring with the despair in his eyes. The nannies were cheerful. The therapists were methodical. They tried to fix her. "I don't need her fixed. I just need her to be." He took a sharp breath. "And I need... He seemed to be gathering the last of his courage, the words sticking in his throat. The shiver that had started on Ilara's skin from the rain now came from a deep, internal cold. "You need a home," Liam Blackwood said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Yet every syllable was perfectly, heartbreakingly clear. "And I need a mother for my daughter." The world tilted. Ilara stared at him, certain she had misheard. The statement was so transactional, so brutally clinical, and yet it was wrapped in the most profound, desperate plea she had ever heard. A mother?" she stammered, her professional composure shattering. Mr. Blackwood, you're not proposing— I am proposing a contract, he said, his businessman's facade slamming back into place, a shield against his own vulnerability. A 5-year contract. You live here. You become Chloe's primary caregiver, her companion, her anchor. You provide the stability, the warmth, the feminine presence she is starved for. In return, you will have this apartment, a salary that will erase any debt you have, and at the end of 5 years, a trust fund that will ensure you never have to work again. You will have security. A home. Ilara's mind raced. Her tiny, leaky studio apartment. The mountain of medical school debt she was still paying off from her sister's long illness. The profound, aching loneliness that greeted her every night. The way she'd look at families in the park and feel a hollow ache in her chest. He was offering her an escape from a life of quiet struggle. He was offering her a purpose. But at what cost? To become a paid stand-in for a dead woman? To sell her compassion, her maternal instincts for a paycheck? You're asking me to pretend, she breathed out. I'm asking you to be, he corrected, his gaze unwavering. For her. Don't pretend for me. I don't expect a wife. I expect a partner in this one. Singular mission. To bring my daughter back to me. Just then, a small shadow moved in the hallway. A little girl with her father's stormy eyes and a cascade of dark hair stood there, clutching a worn-out rabbit plush. She didn't look at Ilara. She looked only at the space on the floor between them, a silent, sorrowful statue. And in that moment, Ilara saw it. Not the lonely CEO, not the shivering nurse, but a little girl trapped in a prison of grief. She saw her own sister's face, pale and sickly, but full of life until the very end. She saw a chance to fill a void, not just in this penthouse, but in her own shattered soul. Her shivering stopped. She straightened her shoulders, meeting Liam's desperate, hopeful gaze. I'll stay, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. On a 3-month trial. For Chloe. The relief that washed over Liam Blackwood's face was so profound, it was almost painful to witness. He nodded, a sharp, grateful jerk of his head. But as Ilara's eyes met the silent, haunted gaze of the little girl in the hallway, she knew with a terrifying certainty that this was no simple contract. She had just agreed to mend a broken family, and in doing so, had stepped into a gilded labyrinth from which there might be no escape. 3 months melted into the rhythm of the penthouse, turning the sterile showroom into something that faintly resembled a home. Ilara's touches were subtle, a bright throw pillow on the austere gray sofa, the smell of cinnamon and sugar from baking, a collection of children's books slowly colonizing the minimalist shelves. And Chloe was beginning to bloom. It started with her hand slipping into Ilara's during a walk in the park. Then, a drawing left on Ilara's pillow, a stick figure with a nurse's cap holding hands with a smaller stick figure. The breakthrough came on a stormy night, much like the one Ilara had arrived on. A clap of thunder shook the building, and a small, terrified figure in pink pajamas had appeared in Ilara's doorway. Without a word, Ilara had opened her arms, and Chloe had burrowed into her side, falling asleep to the sound of Ilara's heartbeat. She still didn't speak, but her silence was no longer empty. It was filled with trust. Liam watched this transformation with a kind of reverent awe. The grim lines on his face softened. He started coming home from work earlier, joining them for dinner, his eyes often lingering on Ilara with a complex mix of gratitude and something deeper, something that made her breath catch. One evening, after he'd read Chloe to sleep, he found Ilara on the terrace, watching the city lights glitter like fallen stars. She drew a picture of you today, he said, leaning on the railing beside her. The space between them hummed with an unspoken tension. In her family drawing for school, it was you, her, and me. Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs. Liam, I know our arrangement was a contract, he interrupted, his voice soft. But it's becoming something else for me. For her, you've done the impossible. You've brought the light back into her eyes. Back into this house. He turned to her, his expression devastatingly open. Into me. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was electric, a spark that ignited all the suppressed emotions of the past months. "This started as a transaction," he whispered. "But it's not that anymore, is it?" Elara looked into his eyes, at the lonely CEO who was finally allowing himself to feel, and she knew her own heart was irrevocably lost. The contract, the money, the security, it all fell away. What remained was a fierce, protective love for a silent little girl and a deep, aching love for her broken father. "No," she breathed. "It's not." When he kissed her, it felt less like a beginning and more like a homecoming. The following weeks were a dream, a stolen, beautiful dream. They were a family. They went to the zoo, built pillow forts in the living room, and Liam laughed. A real, unburdened laugh that transformed his entire face. Elara allowed herself to believe in the fairy tale. She had found her home. She was healing them, and in turn, they were healing her. The dream shattered on a Tuesday. Liam was away at a late meeting. Chloe was asleep. Elara, feeling a sense of domestic bliss she hadn't known was possible, decided to organize the clutter of art supplies that had accumulated in Liam's home office. As she was sorting through a drawer, her hand brushed against a false back panel. It shifted. Curious, she pried it open. Inside was a single sealed manila envelope. No label. Her fingers, now cold and clumsy, tore it open. The contents spilled onto the desk like a poison. Photographs. Dozens of them. Of her. Not recent ones. These were years old. Her, leaving her parents' funeral, face swollen with grief. Her, sitting by her sister's hospital bed, holding a skeletal hand. Her, crying on a park bench, utterly alone. And beneath the photos, a file. A psychiatric evaluation. Patient, Isabella Blackwood. Liam's wife. Elara's blood turned to ice as she read. The report detailed Isabella's severe, treatment-resistant postpartum psychosis, her delusions, her belief that Chloe was a demon, an imposter, that her real baby had been stolen, her violent episodes, the final chilling line from the attending physician's notes, "Patient presents a grave and immediate danger to the child. Strongly recommend permanent separation and supervised visitation only." The world swam. Elara gripped the edge of the desk, her breath coming in ragged gasps. And then she saw it. The final document, a life insurance policy for Isabella Blackwood. The beneficiary, Liam Blackwood. The payout, $50 million. And the cause of death clause was circled in red ink. Accidental death, the car accident. The tragic storybook tragedy that had made him a widowed father. A new, horrifying picture assembled itself in her mind. Not a grieving husband, but a calculating one. A man trapped with a mentally ill wife he couldn't divorce without a scandal and losing a fortune. A wife who was a threat to his child. A wife whose accidental death solved every single one of his problems and made him immensely rich. He hadn't just wanted a mother for his daughter. He had wanted a specific type of mother. Someone with no family, no support system, a profound understanding of grief and terminal illness. Someone who was used to guiding people to their end. Someone who was shivering, desperate, and easy to control. He hadn't found a nurse. He had found the perfect vulnerable pawn. A woman whose own tragic past would make her the most sympathetic, believable witness if anyone ever looked too closely at the story of Isabella Blackwood. A woman whose devotion to Chloe would ensure her silence. The twist of the knife was so cruel, so perfect, it stole the air from her lungs. He hadn't fallen in love with her. He was grooming her. He was ensuring her complicity, weaving her so deeply into their lives that to expose him would be to destroy the child she now loved as her own. The front door clicked open. "Elara, I'm home." Liam's voice, warm and loving, echoed in the foyer. The same voice that had spoken those heartbreaking words that had drawn her in. "You need a home, and I need a mother for my daughter." Elara stood frozen in the office, the damning evidence spread before her. She heard his footsteps approaching, each one a hammer blow on the coffin of her fairy tale. She looked down at a photograph of herself, young and broken at her sister's grave, and saw not a moment of grief, but a profile of the perfect victim. He appeared in the doorway, a smile on his face that didn't reach his cold, calculating eyes. "There you are. I missed you." And as Alara forced her own lips into a tremulous smile, her heart crystallizing into a block of ice in her chest, she understood the unforgettable, horrifying truth. She had gotten everything she'd ever wanted. A home, a daughter to love, a man who adored her, and she was now the sole living person standing between a lonely CEO and the gallows.